Howdy there, folks. Now we would do a quick linear portrait overlay to give you a point of reference. This shows a general likeness and facial structure. We start out with a basic sphere and central vertical axis line as shown in the blue on the human skull. After getting the general proportions set, I make marks on the outside corners of the eye sockets and cheekbones. This gives simple points of reference to check the general proportions. This line on the skull indicates the zygomatic muscle and major plane change between the front and side forms of the head. Now we speed up the process and block in the neck and start to arrange the various distances between the facial features. Note the measuring marks for the nose, mouth, and top and bottom of the chin. Keep checking these as the drawing progresses. Then I bracket in the width of each of the facial features, also block in the planes of the cheeks and temples as shown on the skull. Relatively similar measurements from forehead to eyes, eyes to bottom of the nose, nose to chin. Using horizontal measurements across the face, I check the top and bottom of the ears to get the position and size right. Again, we bring up the facial line diagram to give us a point of reference. As you can see, I am readjusting the features with occasional light erasing for clarity. Time to block in the forms of the hair to complement the face and get the portrait working as a whole composition. I'm not so much drawing the hair, instead I'm focusing on how the volumes fit over the head and define the light planes on the top. Back to comparing and contrasting everything, making changes and editing as we go. At this point, I am really focusing on the structure and planes of the portrait drawing process. The line quality is a bit heavy now, but as the drawing progresses, it will soften. Now I compare the smaller planes to the larger forms, making sure everything is in the right place. As the process moves ahead, you will see a pattern of absolute measurements appear in the proportions of your subject. No matter what the model's facial proportions are or what the angle of vision is, you can always find some similar points of measurements to use. The overall general shapes, forms, and proportion of the model's head are established, so then I move into defining the features. I block in recognizable features for reference, but not so heavily that I can't dig myself out of mistakes. The inside corners of the cheekbones. This will be important when painting or drawing tone and value. Now I use these vertical and horizontal bars to show how to check if my choices are correct. The darker the mark on the bar, the more important the measurement on the head. As you can see, I'm constantly using the skull as a point of reference for light changes and tonal variations on the face. All one has to do is feel your own face to see how the skull influences surface form. Now I start to lightly angle sight the area around the eyes and nose, making sure I correctly block in the depth of the socket. Keep comparing all your measurements. At this point, I use a darker series of lines to showcase the inside corners and planes on the portrait. Perhaps you will notice I don't make a continuous line. I break the lines apart to show differences in light and planes. I move over to the left side to make sure everything is symmetrical and works in tandem. Now I sculpt out the sphere of the chin to get it to project out from the jaw. Picking up the pencil to check my measurements against the model, I block in the eyes, the lids, and the brow. In this diagram, you will see that typically there are 5 eye widths across the head from one edge to the other. Also, another idea is to measure the width of the eye with the tip of the nose. They are generally close in size. Get the eyes set into the eye sockets. Use the angle sights at the place where the brow and the top of the nose come together. Then measure back to the tear duct. Use vertical measurements to get the features to line up correctly. Still working on getting the width of the mouth right. Moving over the face to get the features to work in unison. Angle sighting the underside and top ridge of the nose. Laying out the core shadow on the ball of the nose tip to bring it out from the cheeks. Now, after getting the position right, I move into defining the eyes, not drawing a heavy line around them, but lightly blocking them in so they don't separate from the portrait. Building up the line quality, I'm getting the eyes, lids, and brows and bridge of the nose to work together visually. The photo and linear picture come into view. Please pay attention to how the observational drawing has the head shape, proportion, and appearance of our model, Parker. Now that the portrait approaches the correct appearance of our model, I move into the drawing and readjusting the line quality to unify the concept. Blocking in the mouth, but paying attention to not outline the lips too harshly. Gently erasing lines to soften the plane changes and features. Not too much though. As we pull back and look at the portrait, keep in mind that the drawing has lots of structure and skeletal information. Therefore, all the line and information may make the portrait appear a bit harsh at this point. Now you may notice how my hand and pencil moves around the features into the details of the eyes, the nostrils, and the crease of the mouth. Even blocking out the necklace can help define the tube of the neck and its anatomy. Now I'm setting the pupil and the iris underneath the eyelid. That way you don't get that deer in the headlights look. Back to unifying the overall concept using shadow planes and the facial structure with the light falling from above. In this close-up, you can see the value and line quality working together. A quick review of the skull structure shows the light logic. Remember, the upper eyelid has a thin plane that casts a shadow on the eyeball, including the pupil and the iris. As you can see, I'm still readjusting the shape of the head and softening the planes of the hair, softening the edge of the upper jaw. Gesturing in the overlapping forms of the hair and getting it to flow visually. Basically pulling the whole portrait together with line and tone to complete the composition and process. Back to the eyes and overall tones of the face to unify my process.